So we're gonna get into problem solving mode here. Hydrate with me. I've been hydrating today with water. That's definitely one problem that is a continuous commitment. We're gonna dig deep into these vibes of society and working through things and professionalism and all the things, all the ways in which we tend to overlook things, because this is something I've had to really struggle with and I'm continuously learning. And so, in all this, it is crazy about society and systems, how we interact with these systems. And so, talking about things like clients, things like potential business colleagues, things like structures in society, interacting with church, with school, with the things that you grew up with that you've it's been reinforced into the fabric of what we have to play with a little bit when it comes to like our art supplies in life. These structures are what we have to play with, these Lego structures in society. So it's not that, we'll get into problem solving here. We're going to get into it's not that, and get into what it actually is. And we're going to go deep into it and we're going to analyze. That's the best way that I've found to solve problems with clarity. So, getting into this, it's not that the church itself, there's this huge problem with like something philosophical or spiritual or anything that you may or may not agree with, right? Like that's not actually the full picture. And that was when I got out of religion for a long time, because my soul is deeply rooted in centered beliefs, I could say. Actually, I couldn't say fully left and I couldn't say fully right, but centered. I'm not perfect, but that's why I stay away from like radical politics. I stay away from politics as a whole, because we're not in the age where we can have like a fun political debate over coffee and then agree to disagree and then go and play a game of chess or something, or go and like bowl or something, right? Like we're not living in that time, and that time was probably a little too simple anyway for some things, even though some of that had to do with a lot of practicality. So getting sidetracked, it's in getting away from religion for a long time, I learned a lot of skills that I wouldn't have learned when I got away from religion. Like, I've learned a lot of the collectivism. And then religion was always kind of a pendulum. It's always been a pendulum. And I think in a lot of our lives out in the West, it's not something we want to admit. It's a pendulum of some kind, whether it's being rebellious constantly and having to create a religion of rebellion and dogma around anti-religion, whether that's a spiritual kind or a atheistic kind of dogma. It's still another religion, right, at the end of the day. Even if there are some parts of it that reign spiritual, and who the real Jesus is, and Jesus having many names, and God's having many genders, many facets, that could all be argued, right? But you could see the Bible having many facets and many layers to it, and many interpretations and many hidden books and many different approaches to teaching it. And you could really say, if you found the right church in some capacity, you could find a centered approach. In 2025 and beyond, of these times, whatever time frame you're listening, 2025, 2026, 2027, whatever, like in these, this whole decade, roundabout way, it's like this weird thing with church, though, because there is no centered approach to our religion that is supposed to put people in all different walks of life. It doesn't do that because it creates division. And if a gay couple or a polyamorous or polygamous family walked into a church, they would not be, it's not something that I would necessarily fit in my family or my life personally in a way where, you know, I have enough experience in all of that. We all have different experience on levels as we were younger, you know, before we got with our serious relationships and whatever, and even within those, and just, you know, skill sets that we have from just being younger, from our past, from growing, from learning and learning our own way and seeing our own way of doing things and our own way of learning, to the point where that's the only way you're really going to learn what is right for you. And so, like, I have my adult life that probably would look very church appropriate and would probably be like I could be very appealing as far as like the family structure, right? But I at least can say, because I broke away from religion, it is a family structure that I've chosen. It's not something that the church guided me towards. And a lot of people struggle with, well, the church taught me that this is the right way to have a family, but that's not why you should be with that person or have a family, I would hope. And if you're struggling with that, that's a whole nother issue that you would need to find somebody who relates to your experience and watch them relate to that. But see, what I'm talking about is this going beyond even the nuance of it into, there is no centered, balanced church really, because there's a dogma leftist church that's going to be too extreme, and a dogma right-wing church that we all grew up with that we're tired of, that is just mean and bigoted and for no reason just wanting to throw stones all the time everywhere and making themselves look very obvious. And then the leftist extreme, where it's not educating, not making room for the whole picture of having all walks of life, but kind of wanting to, because people have been tired of getting stones thrown at them, they kind of want the left to be more of a safe space, separate from, whereas the centered approach we would hope would be where everybody would ideally blend in, and spirituality could blend in, philosophy and different ideas of God could blend in. That's not necessarily, we have churches that have communities and kind of newer sectors of religion that sort of do this, that have been doing this, but even within those sectors, doing enough experience in some of that has led me to find out that that is still, you still have your right wing table and your left wing table, and you got the cool kids on one side and the uncool kids on the other side. It's still bullshit, right? It's all this like we never left high school vibe, and we're going to underhand you, we're going to do this. And so it's the problem with church is never the fact that they helped. In my story, I've kind of told you guys a lot. My problem with the church has never been that they've helped me get a hand up in life, that they helped my family and I, that they've helped. Even when I was a child, I didn't forget, you know, the kind people that were there. I am not so bigoted on the left or so bigoted on the right to say that I have to have one kind of friend or another. It's more about the person. I'm very picky and have a very tight circle, and it stays at that. But at the same time, and I'm very lucky to have those friends in person, virtual, because I don't have a lot of them anymore. Like, I don't keep a lot of people around me anymore. There's just no reason to. It cuts out a ton of time that I will waste on you, time that you will waste on me, time that we will waste. So I just don't have a lot of people around me anymore. But the whole nuance of all of this is that to be grateful for having hand-ups and, help getting on our feet is an understatement. I'm like ecstatically more than grateful for that. That's not the problem. The whole picture comes down to the unhealthy stuff is still there, and you're not going to get rid of your preferences just because you've needed, and we live in a world where church takes on a lot of the roles that, we don't have a sense of like backbone friends and backbone families that really stick together. So church takes on that, and then kind of like the government's role in maybe helping people get on their feet better. Church is kind of like, we want to say we're in a separation of church and state, right? But we're not. So what it all comes down to then is the fact that in hindsight, you're not going to get rid of your preferences. You're going to be so grateful that people even helped you. But then on the other side, there does get to be like, there's only so much of that then it starts to become an unintended handout when really you wanted a hand up. And a hand up means that you want to learn skills and networking, and you want to learn business, and these churches are businesses. Why are they not teaching business by now? Like, we're in a new year, right? Why are so many churches helping people from other countries to make our own brand look good? But they're not even they're doing the bare minimum for the people that want to live here. But they're not doing the most that they can to get people to live here. They'll help them on vacation. I don't even have a problem if you're helping people from other countries go here, but you're helping them to have a vacation here, or you're helping to give them a staycation so that they will buy into your church. You're not helping them with like housing. And then not to mention the people here that the government had to step in, where the church sort of failed its own brand in a way, because if it wasn't for the government approving of some funding through multiple churches, then it comes down to the housing and all of that, and all these programs, food banks and whatever, all these things. It comes down to the fact of, we get into a place where it's actually pretty obnoxious how unaware all of this is doing to people who really, none of us, people who are in poverty, people who are disabled, people who, we're the people that come to church for help, and you see us on your doorstep only when we need help. Yeah, because, if you wanted to make it a religious thing, we need obviously fellowship or whatever. But if you also wanted to make it something else, it would be about this nature of even a deeper spirituality that says that community. This is why you get people that say that community is not spiritual, because of this misrepresentation right here, this bullshit, that we misrepresent spirituality because we don't even know what it is. Or like, as a society, some of us could have our own personal relationship with God, spirit, higher power, universe. But by the time that once we got the you might call it a handout from the church, we'd been finding gigs, freelance work that we do to this day, and that involves a lot of different things, tech, creativity, and it goes into like a whole life now with his work. And there's work with money, there's work with passion. It's all work. It's all life, though. It's working through life at the end of the day. And business. And doing business with people and having friends and neighbors and being very natural about it, but having a balance of knowing that, a lot of us don't come from, gold, right? So it's the beauty of like having to struggle on your own in a way is that you have to find it yourself. You have to find these things yourself. And then it makes you wonder if church really isn't there for community and they're only there for you to go and be told. You're being recited to over the Bible. You're being recited to over things you were taught to memorize, just like in school. It's no different than if you never left school, if you never went to college, if you just kept going to school all your life, right? And you're this brute memorization. And let's say the college just never wanted you to leave, right? And you just kept going. And there was all this sort of tension around it, but then you had no energy to burn. So you were just going. And so then what ends up happening is that in the midst of it, in going, let's say you just like, you're at the college and they're sort of like doing the same sort of thing. It's no different if for the people that criticize college. I don't necessarily, for me, I'm not like a college person, but I don't necessarily criticize it if it really is there, I guess. I'm hoping that some of the structure part of college will change over the coming years and kind of be a bit more realistic, but that's a whole nother thing. My thing, though, it's like by the time you figure out that you have skills and you can make money, once you've gotten out of your emergency situation, and by the time you figured out what people you need to cut out that are not actually helping, that are not actually there to help solve the problems with you, but that are actually kind of like draining any resources you have, you're actually having to share the resources in order to maintain these relationships. You've done all this work yourself. What do you need church for? And then not to mention now we've got AI expanding and growing and learning with us and collaborating with us. So now you've got all that. If you were someone who was very biblical and gravitated towards that, you can even create your own sort of like gathering with your friends that you trust. There's so many ways you can even have church to begin with nowadays. What do you need the traditional building for? Because I don't want to make this a philosophical debate. I've already been through all of that. I have my own spirituality, my own relationship with God, higher power. I've talked to you about the multifaceted nature of that. But by the time you figured out all of that, you never wanted a handout from the church, right? You've never wanted for them to just give you something and you not have to work for it. That's awful. And at the end of the day, it starts to become, you try to form communities around, maybe you want to learn from people and you want to work with them and you want to involve hiring and paying and all that. But then a lot of people would rather just see you as a pity. They don't want you working with them and doing business. They don't want to treat you as an adult equal. And it's really, really disempowering. And that's abusive. Like, you've got to stay away from that, because they're not going to, their needs are being served because you are being written off as a tax write-off. against your own will. This help that that's why a lot of these places, in some ways, when you need them in their emergencies, do what you have to do. I'm somebody my soul is very, very centered, and I have a lot of leftist beliefs, and I have a lot of practical right-wing beliefs where it's practical. But at the end of the day, if you are in an emergency, I'm not going to sit here and I'm not the one to tell you figure it out with nobody, because no, if you're in a fucking emergency, you're going to run to a church and you're going to try to and they're going to do some minimum thing to look a little bit helpful. They want their brand to succeed, but it's going to be some kind of tax write-off somewhere. And so I'm not saying that to discourage. What I'm saying is, if you need to get something out of it as an emergency, don't actually feel bad for doing it, because that's how they survive as a business. So you're helping them survive as a business, is what I'm actually telling you. And you're teaching them that through their own feeling guilted to a certain level, they cannot necessarily judge you away without looking bad. And karma and God working together will catch up with people that turn you away. That's for damn sure. Or the people that really do the bare minimum, or who are not treating you like an equal. And because, that's just it. You want to talk about spirituality and God and all that. Spirituality, God, higher power, responds to the work that you put in. And sometimes there are some positive community results, very briefly, that you might get from a couple of churches, if you've ever tried or whatever. But it's going to be very temporary, and it's going to be there. Like, the more right-wing centered side of me says, like, I still have close friends who are a little bit churchy, but my criteria has gotten very, like, I have high standards now. They can't be too churchy, and they can't be every Sunday churchy. They've got to be spiritually involved with God, and help their church community, and take the help that we give them, so that we can be working with them in a spiritual way that doesn't involve forced church every Sunday, but involves going to maybe a tiny church and just hugging each other, helping each other, giving each other things, even for a couple of minutes. Those are like the real people that will take your hiring offers. They'll let you hire them. They will be your friends. They'll treat you like equal. They're out there a little bit. But you also have to center yourself to say, guess what? I don't have to have my exact spiritual beliefs constantly enmesh and constantly, like, agree with my friends, because that's also not spiritual. That's dogma. And as a healthy individual having to work through society, we don't talk enough about this stuff, because we want to have some end goal. It's either you get the fuck out of the church and you never go back again, or you stay the fuck in the church and you carry buckets of wet dirt with you throughout your life as you go through, and you're being told how to have a relationship with God. Or, as they say, guided to have a relationship with God, or guided to salvation, or whatever the fuck, right? When maybe it's not quite that simple. There's nuance to it. And to all the friends who have ever judged for getting help from churches, would you rather your friends go and, like, stand at your door in emergencies and just literally go to your door and be like, I have no place to go? Like, would you have rather that happened, and then you feel guilted into helping them in that way? Or these family members that judge in a way, because a lot of us have had to take care of family. A lot of us have had to have some sort of accountability for making sure that those that we actually really love are taken care of as they end their life, as they begin their life, as they go throughout their life, and their life is doing what it's going to do. And as they support you, as they are honest with you, as they give you the tough love that you need. But like, people don't want to look at why were you in an emergency. They want to look at how you got yourself there. So there's the why too. So anyway, we're doing a bit of problem solving here. So I really appreciate you being here for this. I think it's really important to look into in problem solving mode in your own life. And this is just one aspect of it. We'll get deeper as time goes on. And in any kind of thing that you're doing in life, any preparation, errands, work, business, family, it's all an art project in your life. And that's how you can prepare to keep going every day with the commitments that you have to do. So there you go. Hope that gives you some kind of a grounding that you needed.